a genius that ain't crazy.
People treat that line like it's a joke, like it's a meme you see under a post and keep scrolling. Because it is a bit corny, but I actually want to take that sentence a little more seriously. Because every time someone says crazy, they're actually not talking about a diagnosis. They're reacting emotionally. What they really mean is this person doesn't behave the way I expect them to. They're unpredictable, they're uncomfortable, they're hard to place in a sense. And that matters because from the start, crazy wasn't a term that was used medically, especially in everyday language. It's a social label, what society uses when someone refuses to fit in it. Someone trusts themselves too much, that's labeled crazy. When someone obsesses over an idea for years, that's crazy. When someone risks everything without permission from anybody, that's crazy. And when someone refuses to explain themselves, that's crazy. So before we even talk about genius, we have to be honest about something really uncomfortable. Most of the time, crazy just means non-compliant. And once you truly understand that, it changes your worldview. And I know that because it changed mine. Genius is rare by definition. Society, on the other hand, is built for average. Schools reward consistency, workplaces reward stability, culture rewards predictability. Where genius doesn't live inside this black and white box that we place it in. Genius lives on the edge, so to speak. Not to be corny, but it requires obsession, it requires intensity, it requires staying with an idea longer than most people are even comfortable with, even when there's no validation from anybody around you. And from the outside, those traits don't look healthy. And frankly, they usually aren't with most people. They look antisocial, they look unbalanced, they look unstable. So society does what it always does. It confuses differences with dysfunction. They label people autistic, ADHD, whatever. This is why artists are always the first example people bring up when they're thinking of someone who's either free thinking or speaks creatively. Artists don't think differently because they're different to us. They perceive differently, they feel things harder, they notice what others tune out. They experience emotion at a volume most people would find overwhelming. That heightened perception is exactly what makes their work powerful. But it's also what makes life heavier. This is where people misunderstand the point. This is not about saying suffering creates greatness, even though a lot of the time it does. Pain isn't a requirement. Mental illness isn't some magic ingredient that's going to make you a genius overnight. What is real is that extreme sensitivity can produce extreme insight. And society loves the output while being deeply uncomfortable with the person who produces it. A lot of the time we hear the phrase, separate art from the artist, which just translates into, we celebrate the art, we'll quote the lyrics, we'll hang their paintings, but the things they're talking about, it doesn't matter. The behavior don't matter. And that tension doesn't just disappear with time. I think it intensifies it, so to speak. Because now these people aren't just artists. They're public figures, they're role models, they're people we look up to. And especially, they're literally content. Which brings us to Ye. Ye isn't important because he's perfect or because Ye is always right. Even though a lot of time he is right. He's important because he makes that tension visible. I'm not saying bipolar disorder is a superpower. Ye said it, I didn't say it. It could cause real harm, especially to the individual who has it and to the people around them. That's something that just shouldn't be romanticized. Pretending it has no impact on how someone thinks, creates, or takes risks is just being extremely dishonest. Bipolar can be a superpower. It can. It amplifies traits that already exist, like confidence. It can become certainty. Creativity can become idea overload. Emotion can swing from intense focus to complete collapse. That doesn't excuse behavior, but it explains the patterns. If we look at Ye's career, he's constantly pushing what can be done with total disregard for genre boundaries, public vulnerability with no filter, and instinctive trust in his own vision over institutions, experts, literally everybody. Those traits are what I believe built his legacy. And those same traits destabilized his life for a long time. And that's the part a lot of people avoid when they talk about bipolar or any other mental illness being a superpower. And also, Ye didn't become unstable after becoming a genius. This instability and the genius come from the same thing. They come from the same place. And if we look how society responds, when the album hits, it's like, oh, he's a visionary. Yeah, he's a once-in-a-lifetime generational mind. But when his words aren't favorable for them, yeah, he's insane, he's dangerous, he's disposable. The same person, the same traits, the same mental illness, but like a completely different outcome. Which tells you something uncomfortable. We don't judge the behavior. We judge the results. And this is where the conversation has to expand, because not all crazy looks like mental illness. It doesn't look like a straitjacket in a mental asylum. Sometimes it just looks like risk. Take Steve Jobs as an example. Steve Jobs had no dramatic label people like to debate, like with bipolar, for example. But if we look at his behavior, Steve Jobs dropped out. He ignored every expert. He bet everything on unproven ideas. He obsessed over details nobody even cared about, like fonts. We wouldn't even have fonts on the iPhone or the Windows PC if it wasn't for his weird obsession with things. He believed in a vision so strongly it made him difficult to work with. And anytime you see his co-workers or his family talking about him, it's always with the same thing, that he was hard to live with, hard to work with, hard to be around. By normal standards, this is irrational and reckless. And that's crazy. But here's the truth people avoid saying out loud. If Steve Jobs failed, history wouldn't call him a visionary. It would just call him delusional, just another wannabe inventor. And then there are cases where there is no big corporate win, so to speak. There's no cultural validation. The creator of Temple OS followed a vision so personal to him, so uncompromising that it didn't fit into any existing category. There was no money made from it, no collaboration, no interest in approval. This isn't something to romanticize. Isolation and instability, they are real and they very are painful for those that experience it. But it exposes something important. Society doesn't know what to do with genius that refuses to perform, behave, or be profitable. If success redeems madness, then failure condemns it, even when the underlying brilliance is undeniable. Maybe the real issue isn't the mind. Maybe it's the environments that we place these people in. Modern systems demand emotional regulation, practicability, and efficiency. Genius often demands obsession and intensity. That's not a personal conflict, it's a structural one. We don't suppress these extreme minds because they're useless, because obviously they aren't. We suppress them because they're disruptive. So when Ye said, name one genius that ain't crazy, maybe that's not even the real point. The real question is whether our society's actually got space for people who think too far outside the box. Mental illness is real. The risk is real. Consequences are real. But so is the truth. Crazy is often just what conviction looks like before it's proven correct. History doesn't move forward because people are well adjusted. It moves forward because some people are willing to risk being misunderstood, mocked, or written off, and accept the consequences if they're wrong. And that's why I like Ye, because for all his flaws, he makes that really impossible to ignore.
I ain't say the right thing back then. I would just pray you know what I meant. I would pray you know where I've been. Why you ask, you know where I've been. Why you making me tell evidence? First night you was hesitant. I promise to never, ever fall in love again.